there was a late report that after the voting came down, that the owners went into a separate little side session there. And I guess, they were trying to get someone to maybe change their mind. Maybe the NFL was trying to be the muscle there and push them into it. Jason Kelsey, on the latest edition of the New Heights podcast, he was at the owners meeting, and he said he went to go to Minnesota because, as he explains, that there was a lot of false statements about the tush push, that some of the owners were literally trying to say that Kelsey retired due to the wear and tear on his body because of the tush push.
I'm actually going to Minnesota.
What?
So there were some things said at the last owners meeting. Some of the owners and coaches hinted that the reason I stopped playing was because of the tush push and that I got hurt on the tush push frequently.
What the
I'm just going to answer any questions people have about my partaking in this play.
So here's Kelsey walking around like, hey, anybody want to ask me questions about the tush push? He's basically saying that there were owners who were saying that Kelsey retired in part because the injuries from the tush push were so detrimental to him that he just couldn't keep on going. And he said, yes, that was totally made up and false, that was not the case. Now, he also went on to say that he didn't really care if the tush push was allowed or not, and this is the reason.
I don't care whether it gets banned or not. I think that at the end of the day, this is why you vote on things. And if they vote to ban the tush push, the Eagles are still going to run quarterback sneak at a very high percentage. I'm just going to offer any type of if anybody has any questions about the tush push or whether I retired because of the tush push, I'll tell you this right now. I'll come out of retirement today if you tell me all I got to do is run 80 tush pushes to play in the NFL. I'll do that gladly. It'll be the easiest job in the world, and it'll be like 80-some snaps.
So Kelsey says I could come out and just run that play because a lot of the conversation was about the safety, the health and safety of players. And Kelsey's essentially saying, look, that play's the easiest play to run. If I could run that thing 80 times, I'd be great. So a lot of misconceptions about the said play. Now, that being said, the play is not going to be banned. I would imagine somebody next year is going to try to bring it up again, and I would imagine, again, they're going to lobby all season long to try to get this thing banned, and the league doesn't want it. I don't think that's a secret. I think the league wants this play gone. I don't think it's because the Eagles do it. I think they just don't like the play, and they want it out. The Eagles did a good job. Apparently, Jeffrey Lurie got to some owners. He was kind of lobbying and pitching why he felt the play should have remained. And the teams that voted in favor of it were a little odd. I mean, it was just random AFC East teams, the Jets, the Patriots, the Dolphins were another one. The Bills did not. The Bills, who run it the second most after the Eagles, they voted it down. They did not want the play anymore. So I thought that was a little bizarre. We knew that going in that the Bills were against it. Other teams that voted for it, Baltimore, Cleveland. So you got a couple teams in the AFC North that don't have to really play the Eagles. The Detroit Lions were another team that decided, hey, you know what? And they play the Eagles this year. So you heard what Jason Kelsey said. The tush push ban falls short. They needed 24 votes. They only got 22 votes. So the tush push stays at least another year.
I wanted to point out that there's reporting out there that apparently it's now fully coming out. The NFL was the ones who went to the Packers and asked them to push this.
Bad look by them, man.
So now there's almost a question of, let me ask you, Mike. We know in the past the NFL has given a very rigorous process in terms of making sure new ownership gets in, right? Is there going to be a conversation where, hey, we'll let you be the next owner of said team? The Broncos are a team that's been for sale recently. Does the NFL ask the new owner, you're going to be the next guy to put this proposal up next year?
They could go to any team that voted against it, I would imagine. They'd just go around the room. Hey, now it's your turn to put it up. Green Bay did the dirty work last year. Now it's your turn. I would imagine it will be up for vote again next year. And I would imagine this year, Roger Goodell will go around the league and he will try to talk to the 9 teams that voted against banning it and try to get one or two of them to have their Marlboro Rye stolen, right?
Yeah.
And basically say, you don't have the votes, Jeffrey Lurie. and Laurie goes around and he's trying. But I think it's clear the NFL does not want the play because they don't like the look of it. They think the play is a not aesthetically pleasing play, not a reason to get rid of it in my mind. If they just would have said, look, the pushing or pulling of the player gives the offense an unfair advantage, that's the reasoning why we decided to kind of get rid of this play. Jordan Mailata said they will run the tush push, whether it's banned or not. Here's what Jordan Mailata said on Tuesday.
They call it, we run it. Simple. We know the technique that we need to do. We know where we need to be.
But as far as them potentially removing it from the game to you guys?
Yeah, man, that's not up to us. And we can't control they rule it or not. But they're ruling the push.
Yeah.
I guess we just do it without no push then. I think that's the solution.
Seemed very matter of fact to Jordan Mailata, and I want to get Geoff Mosher's take on this. And Jeff, of course, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, brought to you by Bet365 from PhillyVoice.com and Inside the Birds. As Mosher, were you at the press conference yesterday?
I was, sir.
All right, I thought I heard your voice. I don't know if you did ask a question or not, but I thought I heard.
I got the best answer. I got the best one from Jalen Hurts.
Right, I was going to say, I thought I heard your voice asking questions throughout the day, or maybe the Hurts question. I definitively thought I heard you. So you were there yesterday. It was a weird situation. You have an extension. It was almost like you said, does anybody want to go talk in for Nick here? I want to get to that, but the tush push thing, it did pass today. I don't know if you found it interesting or anything about the teams that voted for as opposed to the teams that voted against. They got 9 teams to come on their side. One of them is on the schedule this year. The other 8 were not on their schedule. The entire NFC East voted against it, but the Eagles will get this for another year. But what do you think, Jeff, about the league reportedly telling the Packers to vote for this to get rid of it?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's a report about that, and it seems a little strange that a league would force one particular team. I guess because the Packers have been the most outspoken, or were they not? And then the league wanted them to be the ones. The Packers are an interesting team to. Again, I think every team in some form or fashion tried something like this, and the Packers were doing it with their tight end. They did it twice against the Eagles, where they motioned their tight end behind center, took the snap, and pushed him forward. So they were an odd team to speak out so loudly against it. But my big takeaway from the press conferences, Mike, was that the Eagles were very, at least the ones they put in front of the cameras yesterday and the microphones, I think it was strategical how ambivalent they were about the rule potentially the play potentially being banned. I think as a team, they've made a conscious effort to move on, whether it's going to be in the, regulated out or not, and to sort of not let that define their success. I think that was intentional. I can't prove that, but the way they were all, the front office fought vociferously for it during the meetings, but the way the players and even Nick Sirianni yesterday were just very matter of fact about it made me think that they're not allowing this to become so pervasive, right, that it's going to be something that they walk around feeling sour grapes about, which I think is a really smart strategy. Basically saying we're better, we're more than this. We've got a bunch of crybabies in the league. We can't do anything about it. I think A.J. Brown said it best, right? What, it's just a yard, right? So, and I like how Jordan Mailata put it. He said, I guess we'll just run something else.
Yeah, And you heard we played the Jason Kelsey stuff on the New Heights podcast, him and his brother saying, look, they're 92% successful with or without this play on getting that yard. It doesn't seem like they thought that it was as big a deal as everybody seems. It's just more like, hey, were they targeting the Eagles for some particular reason?
I don't think so. I think if there were another team doing it as successfully as they did, it would probably still be come under scrutiny. Maybe they're just targeting a team that has success. Like the Patriots.
Well, because they did not vote on this when the Eagles were not very good in 2023. This did not come up.
Right. No. It came up a little bit in 2023.
Did they vote on it?
I don't know if they voted, but it was starting to make the rounds of discussions at that point. I think that there were concerns raised about it if we go back that far. But you go back to like the Patriots, right? The Tuck rule. That was a team that won. Now they were very early in their stages. They weren't the dynasty Patriots yet, but that was a rule that favored a team that was having a lot of success at the time. So I do think sometimes subconsciously organizations in the NFL look at like things that successful teams do and start to question whether or not that should be permissible.
Yeah. All right, Moshe, a couple other things I want to get into that kind of came down the wire today before we get to some of the things that you were at the press conference yesterday. Nick Sirianni obviously gets that extension. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we're going to get a little inside look at Nick Sirianni. The entire NFC East will be featured on Hard Knocks this year. They will be the in-season Hard Knocks. So you will see Eagles, Giants, Commanders, and Dallas. If you are trying to break down the amount of exposure these four teams get and you're producing that show, what is it going to look like? Because this one could be a whopper.
Yeah, I imagine the Cowboys will be featured pretty prominently on it because, they always are.
Well, it's interesting, though, because of the timing of this. Now, that's assuming we think the Cowboys are probably – because it's in December. It's going to air in December. So usually they did it like in real time almost, like for 4 weeks. So you're probably going to be getting them like in November, probably around Thanksgiving, as these episodes are going to air in December.
Right. That's a good point. And so we really don't know which of the four teams is going to give you the most good film and good footage because the season has to take on a life of its own.
Right. Well, that's going to be very interesting because I think the Eagles would be so anti doing Hard Knocks. So the league is basically saying, we'll find a way to get you on. How about the whole division? And the Giants are now back on there.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is from an Eagles-Cowboys standpoint is those games will be over most likely by the time we see, if it's really going to be November or even late October, then you're probably not going to get the lead up to Eagles-Cowboys. But however, you will get it for Eagles Commanders.
Maybe
possibly.
not, though. No, because the show's going to air in December. You will not get the two Commanders games because they're going to be like,
that's a good point.
Yeah, afterwards. So you'll probably get no NFC East, actual games there. You might get Eagles later in the year. What are you going to get? Maybe Eagles.
You might get that second Cowboys game, maybe then. Right, I forget when that game is, but yeah, we'll see. It'll be good fodder. I just think it's funny as you just mentioned that the Giants are going to inadvertently get themselves back into the Hard Knocks after the disaster of their offseason.
And by that time, they might be out of it. So a lot of the stuff could be them discussing whether or not they should fire the coach, fire the GM. I mean, that could just be theater right there, right?
Oh, it sure could be.
Yeah, by the way, right before December, the Eagles do play Dallas so it could be Detroit, Dallas, and the Bears. Those games, it could be Green Bay. Actually, if you do the 4 Novembers, that's 4 weeks. I think last year they had 4 episodes, and I think it was 8 episodes. Oh, okay, it was 8 episodes. So they might film from October, November, and then air them in December.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting then.
Yes, that changes the dynamics a little bit. All right. Nick Sirianni, I want to start there. I said yesterday, this guy is the most improbable success story. He is the most improbable Philly sports success story maybe ever. The guy is literally Rocky Balboa. He should be the most popular sports figure in the city maybe ever, and yet people still not sold on him 100%. Like, this guy should be the most beloved, even if you are irrational in your love for this guy. It's the most improbable Philly sports story ever. This guy came from nowhere, gets to be the head coach of the Eagles, and wins the Super Bowl. And why do people still not believe?
I don't know. I mean, and by the way, it's not just win the Super Bowl. I mean, he's been to 2. His winning. It's not like he came out of nowhere either. I mean, it's really remarkable. All of his historic win rates. Whether it's overall wins, road wins. He's one of the best. I get maybe it's just We talked about this on Monday, and it's not a fair thing, but it's constantly brought up that he has these great rosters put together by Howie Roseman, and it kind of creates this just don't screw it up type of environment for Nick, or at least public perception environment for Nick. But I think that does undermine how much it takes to be an NFL head coach and how hard it is to especially hold things together after this kind of slide they had in 2023.
Yeah, I know that he is – I don't know. What is it about Nick that you think that he hasn't connected with the fan base the way that a Super Bowl – Doug Peterson, when they won the Super Bowl, people that were kind of like, I don't know about Doug. When he won the Super Bowl, he won everybody over pretty much. I mean, yeah, there might have been a small minority that was still like, whatever. Why hasn't Nick won people over?
I mean, I don't think that I'm not sure that he hasn't. I mean, I haven't seen any poll that says he's an unpopular guy. Is he a hero like he should be, to your point? Maybe not. And again, part of that might just, I feel like if you did a poll, and not on Twitter because you get some weird responses there, but I don't know, if you asked 100 diehard Eagles fans, who do you think is the most important person in the franchise, and just said A, Nick Sirianni, or B, Howie Roseman, I think Howie would win that poll. So I think it just goes to show again that Nick is penalized a little bit by the whole just don't screw it up notion that he's been saddled with because he's had loaded teams, which again, I'm not saying is fair or unfair. I think that kind of like how Howie had to finally win without Andy Reid here to really be beloved and respected. It may have to be the same thing where Nick may have to someday win a Super Bowl here when Howie's, already retired or something, for people to say, hey, you know what? He actually is a good coach. It's not just that he's handed loaded teams.
Yeah, it is funny because, one of the things I feel like some people say, he panders, he's a little this, or I don't like the way he acts. But I feel like that's everything that the Philadelphia fan wants. He almost is like, your buddy got hired to coach the Eagles, right? And he's just out there still being the stupid friend that you had, and he hasn't changed, and yet he just got to be the Eagles head coach, and he's out there, and he's telling the other team's fans off, and he's mugging for the camera. Like, he's, the guy from Delco.
Yeah. Man, Delco getting shrapnel here, deservedly. No, I decided a long time ago, Mike, doing this where – in our industry, we do try to kind of get a consensus opinion or build like what do the fans want. And in many cases, there are plenty of cases where the fans are one-sided one way or another, right? There are some cases where it almost feels like 50-50, like the process with the Sixers. But the one thing I try not to do is make the fan base out to be a monolith. So when you're talking about the fans, I think there are a lot of fans that do love that part of Nick Sirianni, and there are some that it's just not their cup of tea, but they still really like what he's done and respect him as a head coach. And it's hard. I mean, I can't name too many coaches in this city over the past 10 to 15 years who were universally beloved, where you could say the fans loved. I mean, Charlie Manuel won a World Series. He had skeptics, right? So I feel like there's just not that. That's the way we are as a society. Unless you win like six championships, unless you're Phil Jackson, right? Or Scotty Bowman or something like that, you're Bill Belichick, you're probably going to have your sort of legion of doubters or skeptics or people who have some nitpick or bone to pick with you.
You said, you talked to Jalen Hurts about the evolving offense coming up in 2025 here. They're going to have another new coordinator here. I think what he said yesterday, he was asked about Kevin Petula and what he thinks what the offense is going to look like. I mean, this is the fourth straight year he will have a new offense. How will this offense kind of evolve in his mind?
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway that I wrote about for Philly Voice, which is up right now on phillyvoice.com, is that there was a lot of talk from Jalen, from A.J. Brown, Jordan Mailata, about Kevin Petullo, about the offense. Nick Sirianni also did, and the need to evolve, the need to incorporate fresh concepts, the need to not be stagnant in a league where you're getting studied, especially when you win. The way the Eagles were, and everybody knows how they won last year with Saquon Barkley and their running attack for the most part. And that was really Jalen Hurts. I said, why is that important to you? And he took a really long pause, Mike. And I said, my question was, why is it so important that you evolve when you've had so much success doing what you're doing? Long pause. And then he went into a phrase that I believe he got from Michael Jordan when he chatted with Michael Jordan as being a Jordan brand spokesperson, which is he said that you have to detect, decode, and correct, I believe, were the three pillars there of what he was talking about, which I think, again, came from Michael Jordan. Decode, detect, and correct. And then he talked about refining. And I just can't help but think about, Mike, 2023, coming off that Super Bowl of 2022 when everything looked great. Yes, they lost to the Chiefs. It was a great game, scored a lot of points, but they were not the same offensively, despite having a lot of the same players. They fell off. And you remember at the end of the year when Nick was firing his OC and parting ways with the quarterbacks coach, bringing Kellen Moore, he said, my offense got stale and we need new concepts. So I can't help but think that they've learned from that with now another new offensive coordinator and an outside quarterbacks coach, which I think is good. You got an in-house guy and an outside guy that you don't just carry over everything you did the year before. You add, you refine. Now, whether or not they can do that, to me, is the big question, but certainly it's on their minds that they need to evolve.
All right, Geoff Mosher. By the way, before we get out of here today, it was a Stump the Sports Geek day. The category was lead singers. How would you think you would do?
What era?
It was mostly 90s, a little early 2000s, and a little like 80s. Little.
I'm probably not great where if the whole idea is you give me the band and I have to give you the lead singer, then I might struggle. I'm pretty good with individual artists, but go ahead.
All right, do you know who the lead singer of the Foo Fighters is?
David Kroll from Nirvana, right? It's Kroll.
Dave Grohl, yes.
Dave Grohl,
yes.
Grohl, not Kroll, yeah.
Right. Do you know who the lead singer of Oasis is?
It's an Irish-sounding name. I want to say Liam Gallagher.
You are correct.
Okay.
Do you know who the lead singer of Radiohead?
The lead singer of Radiohead. Man, he has a very distinct voice, but I don't know his name.
All right, Tom York. Do you know who the lead singer of the White Stripes is?
No.
Jack White. Do you know who the lead singer of REM is?
Michael Stipe.
That is correct. The Cure.
Oh, God, I love The Cure, and I can see his fuzzy hair. I just can't remember his freaking name right now. That's just because I'm on the spot. If you had asked me like yesterday, I'd probably be able to say it, but I'm drawing up Thomas. Wait, is it Thomas something?
No.
No? Okay, what is it?
Josh almost guessed it, but I said it's a really plain, bland name. He said Joe Smith. It's Robert Smith.
Robert Smith. That's right. Yes. Oh,
do you know the lead singer of Blondie?
Debbie Harry.
That's correct. You said that so matter-of-factly. I figured Josh would have got that like everybody would have. Fleetwood Mac.
Stevie Nicks?
Yes.
Okay.
No Doubt.
Gwyneth. No, I almost said Gwyneth Paltrow, the actress, but it's Gwen Stefani.
That is correct. All right, so you got a lot of these. Josh got 2.
That does not surprise me whatsoever.
Well, the listeners were playing for Luke Bryan tickets, and he, screwed them.
Oh, that's too bad. Josh, next time you need a pinch hitter, you call me up, all right, buddy?
Next time we'll have to do it where you have a phone a friend, and Mosher will step in there for you. All right, there's Geoff Mosher. Was there anything else from the press conferences that you wanted to add that stood out?
I thought it was interesting. Nick Sirianni has. You remember how Howie Roseman got banished by Chip Kelly and spent the time off, really talking to other executives to try to be better, and that was after after a bad year. Nick Sirianni wins the Super Bowl. He winds up talking to people like Nick Saban, Dawn Staley, Gino Auriemma, people who have won multiple championships. Right, his college head coach, who's won, I believe, a couple of D3 championships, on what do I have to do now that I've won one to make sure that I can keep continuing? Or what's the best advice? Mm-hmm. So I thought that was another example of Nick Sirianni not being complacent. For whatever we say about him, has a really good head on his shoulders and an understanding of what it takes to succeed.
All right, well, good stuff. PhillyVoice.com. He's got a piece up on the offense evolving, some of the stuff that Jalen Hurts had to say yesterday about his new head coach and his new offense. Check that out at phillyvoice.com. And, of course, check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast, which you can check out on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds. All right, Geoff Mosher. See you, man.
See you guys.